Hello there, my name is John Bracken, student number G00472878, and I'm here today to discuss my choice of topic, which was Firefox OS. When you first go into the website, it brings you to the introduction page, so you can click either Firefox OS or introduction. That'll take you to the same place anyway. Firefox OS was compared to other native mobile operating systems, it was built on fundamental web technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is explained and referenced, especially using footnotes to explain with further information the general introduction, history, semi-growth, and ultimate demise of Firefox OS by Mozilla. We then look at the history of Firefox OS from its, what you could say, conceptual origins at Mozilla, where it was based off a project referred to as B2G or Boot Gecko, that was within Mozilla from about 2009-2010, so about 5 years after they actually brought out the Firefox browser. And from there, a public announcement, strategic framing, in the sense that Mozilla were outlining to the market, to the industry, their proposition for how they were going to roll out their product using cornerstone web technologies, as I said, HTML, CSS, and essentially JavaScript, to make a comparative version of an operating system that would compete with the duopoly of then Android and iOS and some others. From its commercial launch in 2013, somewhat expansion and a technical maturation in the sense that they went as far as they could with the marketplace, especially the developer marketplace, and support from their network partners, to its ultimate retrenchment and decline, and where it was pulled by Mozilla. Just using, again, the footnotes as a widget, kind of ease of life widget, some references as well, and then to go up to the top of the page. This is followed by the features of Firefox OS. Obviously, being quite a limited product with a limited method behind it, these were chosen as the most generic, and in some cases one or two specific ones. So where you have web apps as first-class citizens, this is more of a generic one, but all of these are referenced. They are as specifically outlined as possible and detailed, and I try to provide as much information on them without being overly verbose. And again, some widgets in use of life regarding backgrounds, footnotes, move to the top is used. I structured the advantages and disadvantages for this in the sense that I wanted to frame them in a comparative sense, where you take one side, which is an advantage, and then counterpoint that with its related disadvantage. So, for example, the lower entry to barriers to entry for the development of mobile apps on Firefox OS versus a limited app ecosystem, which was one of the things that made it that fall in the end. And again, flexible app distribution models. It wasn't just a kind of monolithic centralized app repository, it was an open marketplace. And then one counterpoint to that was its declining partner and developer support that ultimately saw it losing market share, even though it had only a very small amount, and then ultimately finishing. Pull statistics at each point where I could regarding the predicted market saturation of only about 1%, up to its growth with data versus its comparator. And as you can see, Android held a significant amount compared to everything else. And even nowadays, despite what people might think, Android is the de facto kind of operating system in the world. Again, it's all referenced, it's structured. I made some kind of widgets to spread out this information because it's quite number heavy. It can be a little off-putting to read. Again, everything's referenced, and it's done in more of a historical sense, a bit like the history, except with the data. And as you can see in the end, Firefox's browser was only about 0.5%, which was tiny as it fell out of the marketplace. Conclusion, as you required, was written without references, but more of a kind of a consolidated opinion of what I found during my time researching the actual topic itself. couple of use of life widgets, some links internally to the site, as you can see down there at the bottom, some external links as well to another ill-fated device called the Black Phone, although the Black Phone failed for different reasons than Firefox OS, and the Black Phone was an actual product just using a ported version of well, you could say a stripped down version of Android as its core OS, but it was mainly the hardware they were trying to sell as being very secure and very private, and maybe being an alternative to a burner phone. And I even compared anecdotally Firefox OS impact on the industry to being akin to the psychologist Stanley Milgram's experiments. I just found them tangential. References are in Harvard style, as you requested. Most of them are pulled from the web. Some I had to use the internet Wayback Machine to find them, because there was actually quite a lack of reference on this. Some good articles on the market itself and Firefox OS. Some were more generic, some were from Apple's perspective, some were from Google's perspective. A lot from Mozilla, and then some market stats came down here. And obviously compliance is the section where you'll find this audio file, as you know. Thank you. So just to briefly summarize some of the things which I feel you looked for regarding what was done, the extra effort. As part of this course, we do learn web development, so I had to engage with using a lot of CSS formatting just to get the site to look how it does, because there's not many images of Firefox OS, so what I tried to use is a background image to show the progression of the logos, but I needed to use a lot of CSS to edit it to make this actual text not get pushed into the background. So there was quite a lot of work on CSS there to complement what was called a Nev or Neve theme that I was using. I tried to experiment with a couple of plugins for the background as well, but they worked with limited use. I did a lot of research into the competitors in the market as well, and experimented with certain plugins for tables of contents and other formatting plugins such as that. The widgets that I mainly used were the main heading and subheading sections and subsections, which were formatted to H3 or H4 sizes, depending. There was a lot of use of section separators and spacers, some use of reading width control widgets, and I used those for the Nev or Neve theme that I was using as well. There was some use of containers as well to make it give it the look it had. I attempted to integrate this kind of simple TOC or simple table of contents plugin as well, but it turned out to be page breaking, so I had to disable it in the end. The hero heading at the top as well was customized. The plugins were mainly Akismet, which is anti-spam. I mean, the website is generally not up very long when I'm working on it. The Matomo Analytics, which you required. I used a plugin for the full screen background to help manage this background image to make sure it doesn't intrude on the front text as well as using CSS. Gutenberg, which is a default, was mainly used for quite a lot of the page editing as well. I used the Hostager tools, which helped me with the versioning. As I said, some of the plugins I used, for instance, Simple TOC, and another one called WPS Hide Login, which was to change the login extension URL from /wp/login.php to something else. They didn't work, and Hostinger showed me the versioning conflicts, especially with PHP, in trying to use these. And then I used the final plugin, which was Site Origin CSS, which just gave me a kind of a real-time view into what I was doing for the CSS edits to make sure the page looked as it did. So all pages have been included: introduction, history, features, advantages, disadvantages, statistics, compliance, conclusion, and references. The main sections are all referenced where required, and again, references are in Harvard style as required. You requested we use the logos of a color scheme for the actual product as much as possible, which is what I've done. I've tried to take the most relevant shades from this and get their mapping colors and use those. The topic has been thoroughly researched. Competitor comparisons with iOS and Android have been used, and at least 5 plugins and at least 5 widgets or ease of use or quality of life features have been added. Atomo Analytics is incorporated, and media has been used sparingly, mainly because there's actually not that many images or screenshots of Firefox OS in operation. Thank you.